The champagne hit Zola Addo's dress before anyone in the room could pretend they hadn't seen it happen. It was not an accident. Accidents have a quality of surprise about them. The involuntary gasp, the immediate flinching apology, the cascade of embarrassment that follows genuine error. What Park Jae-hyun did when she turned from the reception table at the Lot Hotel Grand Gala and drove the full weight of her crystal flute into Zola's chest was something different. It was precise. It was deliberate. And it was performed with the specific confidence of a woman who believed, with the certainty that only a lifetime of consequence-free cruelty can produce, that she would not be held accountable for it. The champagne spread across Zola's ivory gown in real time, golden, cold, irreversible. The ballroom registered it the way ballrooms register cruelty at expensive events, with a sharp collective inhale, a sudden contraction of nearby conversations, and then the particular silence of people waiting to see what happens next before they decide what they witnessed. Zola stood very still. She was 29 years old, Ghanaian-British, and she had the kind of face that held everything it was feeling without broadcasting it. Not because she was suppressing emotion, but because she had learned, in the particular school of being a black woman in rooms that were not built for her, that the first response to any provocation was information, not reaction. Her natural hair was pressed and pinned in an elaborate updo that had taken 2 hours and was still, even now, perfect. The gown, ivory silk charmeuse, borrowed from a colleague at the architectural firm where she worked as a junior associate on Seoul's most significant urban redevelopment project, was ruined. She held Park Jae-hyun's gaze. Jae-hyun was the daughter of Park Sung-kwan, the project's primary investor, a fact that explained both her presence at tonight's gala and the particular quality of her confidence. She held Zola's gaze with the satisfied expression of someone who had done exactly what she intended and was waiting for the reaction that would confirm the power differential she believed existed between them. "Wipe it off," Jae-hyun said, not loudly. She didn't need volume, or the voice that cut her off was not raised. It did not need to be. Or what? The room's silence changed entirely. It went from the silence of witnesses to the silence of a space that has just understood something about its own geography, about which direction danger comes from, and how completely it has reoriented. Park Jae-hyun turned. The man standing 4 feet behind her had moved through a crowded ballroom without anyone hearing him approach, which said everything about the particular quality of his presence. He was not tall in a way that announced itself. He was simply organizing. The way a room organizes itself around certain kinds of gravity without being asked, without acknowledging it is doing so. Cha Min-jun was 38 years old. He wore a dark suit and an expression that had nothing aggressive in its surface and everything dangerous in its depth. His gaze on Jae-hyun was patient and absolute, an invitation with a warning inside it. "Finish the sentence," he said, still quiet, still certain. Jae-hyun's composure fractured. Recognition moved across her face, recognition of what she was looking at, of who she was standing across from, of what every social calculation she had operated on for the past 30 seconds had failed to account for. Cha Min-jun SSI, she began, the formal suffix arriving with desperate velocity. "Don't," he said. One syllable, complete. He looked at the floor manager who had materialized at the edge of the scene. "Please arrange the private suite on the 14th floor. Have someone from the wardrobe collection sent up immediately." He turned to a nearby server, 2 glasses of water sparkling. Then and only then he looked at Zola. She was already looking at him, processing multiple things simultaneously. What had just happened, who this man was, what his intervention cost and what it required of her. "You don't have to stay in this room," he said, directly, simply. "Aware," she said. "I know," he said. "I'm offering an alternative, not an instruction." She studied him for a moment, the still face, the hands in pockets, the presence that had reorganized the entire room without effort. Then she picked up her clutch from the table beside her and walked toward the elevator without looking back. He followed at a distance that communicated escort, not possession. Behind them, Park Jae-hyun stood in the specific silence of someone who had just received a message in a language she understood entirely. The suite's east-facing windows held the Han River like a painting that had decided to be real. Zola stood at those windows when he came in, arms crossed not in defensiveness, but in the self-containment of someone who needs a moment to be in their own body before being in conversation with anyone else's. He did not speak. He set the sparkling water on the table and sat with the unhurried composure of a man who understood that patience was a form of respect. The wardrobe attendant arrived 7 minutes later. Zola chose a navy-structured dress, changed in 4 minutes, came back looking like the ruined ivory gown had been someone else's evening. She sat across from him. "You were in that room for a reason that had nothing to do with me," she said. "Yes," Park Sung-kwan. He looked at her, a half-second of reassessment. "You know his name?" "He's the primary investor on my project," she said. "I'm the lead design associate on the Mapogu urban redevelopment. His daughter has been a low-grade problem for 6 weeks." She held his gaze. "Who are you to him?" "Someone he owes a conversation." "That's not a name," he agreed. "Cha Minjun. He owes me a renegotiation of a financial arrangement that has become unfavorable." "What kind of financial arrangement requires renegotiation at a gala instead of through lawyers?" "The kind," he said, "where the lawyers belong to the person who doesn't want to renegotiate." She processed that. Processed what it implied about the nature of the man across from her and the nature of the evening she had walked into. She processed all of it without changing her expression. "Thank you," she said, "for what happened downstairs. I didn't do it for gratitude. I know, I'm offering it anyway." She held his gaze. "What did you do it for?" He was quiet, honest in the way of someone choosing precision over comfort. "Because she wasn't going to finish that sentence in my presence," he said. And because whatever she was about to say, she needed to understand that the room she was in had different rules than the room she thought she was in. Something settled in Zola's chest. Not comfort exactly. Something more complicated, the specific feeling of being in the presence of someone who had acted not from chivalry or performance but from something simpler and harder to name. Just principle applied precisely. "Project," he said, shifting. "The Mapogu redevelopment. What's the design approach?" She looked at him. The turn was unexpected from the personal to the professional in a single sentence. "Why?" "Because you came to that gala as a professional, not as Sung-kwan's daughter's audience." "You're still a professional. I'd like to hear what you actually came to talk about tonight." She held his gaze for a moment. Then she began. She talked for 23 minutes. He did not interrupt once. He asked 2 questions, both precise, both demonstrating structural understanding of urban development that was genuine, not performed. When she finished, she realized she had not thought about the ruined gown once. "You didn't expect to have that conversation tonight," he said. "I didn't expect any of tonight," she said honestly. He almost smiled. Not quite, but closer than he'd come in the past hour. "Neither did I." She saw him again 4 days later at the Mapogu site, standing at the external viewing point on the elevated walkway where the river bend created a natural vantage of the development's footprint. "You came to look at the site," she said. "Project exists in documents," he said. "The site tells you things the documents don't." He studied the footprint below them. Whoever designed the pedestrian flow understood that people don't move in straight lines when they have a choice. And the green corridor is going to be the difference between something people use and something people avoid. She looked at him. "That's the element that's been in debate for 4 months. Sung-kwan wants to reduce it by 30% to increase commercial floor area." "Won't get it," Minjun said. "He's the primary investor. He's one investor. He's about to have significantly less leverage than he currently believes he has." He said it with the matter-of-fact quality of someone reporting weather. "The renegotiation completed yesterday morning. Sung-kwan's position is now substantially diminished." He glanced at her. "The green corridor will stay." She processed this carefully. "You renegotiated a financial arrangement with my project's primary investor, and the consequence is that a design element I've been fighting for 4 months will survive." "The consequence is that Sung-kwan has less leverage," Minjun said. "What he does with that is his choice." "You knew what it would mean for the project." A pause, just slightly longer than necessary. "I knew what it would mean for the project," he confirmed. She held that information the way she held everything requiring full attention, completely still, turning it over, examining its implications from each angle. She was not naive. She understood that a man like Cha Minjun did not renegotiate financial arrangements and then appear at the project site and tell her what the consequences were without those two things being deliberately connected. The question was what the deliberateness meant, and whether she wanted to find out. "There's a coffee place on the river side of the site," she said. "I'm there most mornings at 7. I'll be there tomorrow if you want to continue a conversation we haven't technically started yet." 7, he said. "I'll be there. Be late. I have a site meeting at 8:30. She walked back toward the site entrance. She felt him watching, not the discomforting watch of someone taking inventory, but the attentive watch of someone who doesn't want to miss anything. She did not let herself look back. She was smiling before she reached the gate. Pause this story right now. If Minjun, standing up before Jai Hyun, could finish that sentence, "Has you ready to lose your mind?" If Zola's composure and the green corridor reveal just rewired something in your chest, then act on that feeling immediately. Comment the word corridor right now. Drop it below so I know you are here and locked in, and subscribe before you go 1 second further, because the next scene contains a betrayal from the one person Zola trusted completely on this project. Someone feeding information to the wrong side since month 1. And Minjun already knows. He's known for 3 weeks. The question is why he hasn't told her yet. That answer changes everything. Don't you dare leave. The betrayal came wrapped in the language of friendship. Yoon Seora had been with the firm 3 years before Zola arrived, had shown her around on her first day, had translated the unwritten rules of the Korean professional environment with the generous precision of someone who remembered what it was to be new. They had developed the closeness of two women navigating a male-dominated industry in a country that had strong opinions about who belonged in which rooms. Zola had shared every version of the Green Corridor proposal with Seora. Every iteration, every argument, every strategic calculation about how to present it to Sungkwan's team. She found out on a Thursday, not from Minjun, but from a document she should not have seen. A forwarded email chain that arrived through a server error, addressed to a consultant at Sungkwan's investment firm, containing the strategic framing of her most recent corridor proposal in language built from hers. Seora's email address was in the thread. So was the consultant's response. Useful. We can work with this ahead of the Thursday presentation. The Thursday presentation was in 4 hours. Zola made one phone call. Minjun answered on the second ring. "You knew," she said. No preamble, just the flat, precise landing of a fact, a silence. "Yes." "How long?" 3 weeks. "Didn't you tell me?" The silence this time was longer. She heard in it the specific difficulty of a man who had operated in a world where information was a weapon encountering a situation, where the strategic calculation and the honest calculation were not the same thing. "Because I was deciding whether telling you was my right," he said finally. "The information came from my network. I was evaluating how much of my world I was willing to show you in exchange for protecting you from something you hadn't asked to be protected from." "That's a very specific kind of paternalism," he said immediately. "It is, I know that. And I should have told you 3 weeks ago," he said. "It's also true that I was afraid of what telling you would require me to explain about where the information came from." "You were afraid again," she said, a pause. "Yes," she breathed. Looked at the clock, 3 hours 50 minutes to the presentation. "I need to deal with this morning first," she said. "Then we're going to have the full conversation about where your information comes from. Tonight, your choice of location." "Tonight," he said. 7 p.m., Minjun, the corridor. "I need the leverage shift to be visible. Today. In the room." "It will be visible," he said. She ended the call and began rebuilding her presentation from its architecture up, in 3 hours and 48 minutes, in a way that assumed the other side already knew what she'd been planning, and had prepared something entirely different for them to find. Park Sungkwan arrived at the Thursday presentation with 4 people, and the confidence of a man walking into a controlled outcome. He was not. Zola presented for 22 minutes. Not the proposal Seora had forwarded. A version that incorporated everything she had learned from the email thread, that preemptively addressed every argument Sungkwan's team had prepared, and that reframed the commercial floor area question so completely that reducing the green corridor appeared not as a financial optimization, but as a liability, environmental compliance risk, public use obligation under the municipal contract, and a reputational calculus that Sung Kwan's firm could not afford with 3 other Seoul projects in its current pipeline. She had built that reframe in 3 hours and 48 minutes. The room was quiet in the specific way of people who had arrived expecting one terrain and found another. Then the door opened. Cha Minjun sat in the chair at the back of the room, the one she had left vacant specifically because she had told him the room and the time. He said nothing. He sat with his hands folded and his eyes on the presentation screen, and the quality of his presence did what it always did. It organized the room around a different gravity. Sung Kwan looked at the screen, then at the man in the back, then at the screen again. Design proceeds as proposed, he said. After the room cleared, Zola stood at the window. You didn't have to come, she said. I know. Your presence was the message. She looked at him. He's going to resent that. He's going to redirect his energy toward things he can still influence, Minjun said. This project is no longer one of them. He paused. How's Seoul? The question landed precisely on the thing she had been carrying all morning. I haven't spoken to her yet. I will this afternoon. She held his gaze. Are you all right? It was the first time he had asked her something purely about her, not the project, not the situation. Just, are you all right? A small question with the weight of something much larger. I don't know yet, she said honestly. I'll find out this afternoon when I know whether she had a reason I haven't considered or whether it was just ordinary betrayal, which is its own kind of loss. He looked at her with the unguarded quality that she had come to know as his truest register. I'm sorry, he said, about the 3 weeks. Tell me tonight, she said. Everything. Then I'll decide what I'm sorry about and what I understand. Everything, he agreed. Leave anything in the shape of it category, she said. We're past that. We're past that, he confirmed. He chose a restaurant in Seongsudong, exposed brick industrial light, the best grilled fish in the district served without ceremony on plain ceramic. A room designed for people who wanted to eat well, talk honestly, and go home. He was there at 6:48. She arrived at 7 and said before she sat. Seoul had a reason. Her mother's medical debt. Sung Kwan's firm was threatening to call in a personal loan guarantee her father had co-signed. She had 3 months of payments she couldn't make. She sat. It was coercion, not betrayal, or it was both. I haven't fully separated them yet. What did you do? I referred her to someone who can structure a repayment arrangement outside Sung Kwan's reach. And I told her she has 1 week to decide whether she stays on the project with full disclosure going forward or leaves with a reference I'll write myself. She held his gaze. What would you have done? The same, he said, but I would have taken longer to get there. She studied him. Is that why you took 3 weeks? Partly. He met her eyes. Partly because I understood what telling you would cost. Not the information, the cost of what comes with it. The question of where I got it. What my network is and what I use it for and what that means about who I am. A pause. I've been building toward legitimate operations for a long time. The network is more than I can fully clean in the time I have. But it is mine and its shape is my responsibility. I didn't want to hand you that complexity before you decided whether you wanted to be in a room with me at all. I decided that on the 14th floor, she said, when you asked about the project design. I know, he said. I was still afraid. She looked at him. You keep being afraid, she said. For someone the entire city is terrified of. The city is afraid of what I can do, he said. That's different from what I'm afraid of. What are you afraid of? He looked at her for a long moment. The restaurant moved around them, soft percussion of other conversations, the smell of charcoal and soy, river district evening light through the factory windows. Being someone that a person like you decides is not worth the complication, he said. Having come this close to a conversation that has no purpose I knew in advance and losing it because I waited too long to be honest. She held his gaze. You didn't lose it, she said. I know. He breathed. I know. She reached across the table and placed her hand over his. Not a declaration, just a hand on a hand, the specific weight of presence that says more than careful language can. Tell me everything, she said. From the beginning, the network, the operations, the transition, the timeline, all of it. She held his eyes. Then I'll tell you what I can live with and what I can't, and we'll both know exactly where we are. He looked at her hand on his, then at her face. Then, for the first time fully, without the architectural suggestion or the structural possibility, but the real and wholly arrived thing, he smiled. The beginning, he said. They were there until midnight. 6 weeks later, the Mapogu urban redevelopment project broke ground with the green corridor at its full original dimensions. Zola spoke for 8 minutes at the ceremony. She spoke about the green corridor, about the principle that public space exists for the people who live beside it, not for the balance sheets of the people who build it. She spoke about the river. She spoke, briefly and without sentimentality, about the obligation of anyone who shapes a city to understand that cities are not structures. They are decisions, and every decision has a face. The loudest applause came from a grandmother in the third row who had attended every public consultation and had argued, with the conviction of someone who had lived in the neighborhood for 40 years, that the children needed somewhere to run that wasn't a road. Minjun attended, not on the program. He stood at the edge of the crowd in a coat that cost significantly more than anything around him, and watched with the particular attention he gave everything, complete, unhurried, missing nothing. He watched Zola stop for the grandmother, crouch to hear a child, shake hands with the most stubborn bureaucratic obstacle on the municipal board with the warmth of someone who understood that obstacles were people with reasons. He watched her be, in every room, exactly herself. She found him at the edge of the crowd as the ceremony dispersed and the equipment began its first movements of genuine construction. "You came," she said. "I said I would." "You say many things," she said. "You mean most of them." "I mean all of them," he said. "I simply say fewer things than most people so that thieverage stays high." She looked at him and felt the specific quality of something she had been building without blueprints for 4 months. Something assembled from a ruined gown and a sentence that never finished and a sparkling water on the 14th floor and a green corridor and a midnight restaurant and every honest conversation between two people who had decided, separately and then together, that the complexity was worth it. "That sentence," she said. "Jai-hyun never finished it," he said. "What do you think she was going to say?" He looked at her. "Something small," he said. "The way all cruelty is small. Something that assumed it knew exactly what you were and what you could be reduced to." He held her gaze. "She was wrong. She was wrong," Zola agreed. She looked at the construction site behind them, the first real movement of ground on something that would take 3 years to build and stand if they had designed it correctly for 50. "Come on," she said. "There's a restaurant in the Seongsu Alley I've been wanting to try. You're choosing the wine. That's the first thing I'm letting you choose." "First of many things," he said. "Push it," she said. "We start with the wine." He fell into step beside her, and somewhere in that specific evening, in a city always in the middle of becoming something, two people who had found each other through a sentence that never finished walked toward what came next. "Wipe it off," she had said. She had not been allowed to finish. What came after the unfinished sentence was not a rescue, it was a recognition. And a recognition, Zola Addo had learned at 29 years old in a city that had tried to make her invisible, was worth everything. It was the only thing that was. "You stayed until the very last word. And now I need 4 things from you before you close this tab." Hit that like button. If the unfinished sentence, the green corridor, or Minjun's smile that finally arrived completely moved something in you, one tap. Right now. Subscribe and turn on all notifications. The next story takes us to Accra, to the origins of a crime network and a woman who built an empire before any of these men knew her name. Subscribers get it first. Share this video with someone who has ever stood still while cruelty performed itself around them and held their composure anyway. Send it to that person today. Comment the exact line that broke you open. Was it "finish the sentence," the green corridor surviving, or the very last line, "It was the only thing that was"? Tell me below. I read every comment, every single one. This story was crafted exclusively for this channel. All characters are fictional, but the unfinished sentence. That happens every day, in every city, in every room. This one ended differently.